This episode of the podcast has been brought to you by Sweet Cheetah Publicity. Sweet Cheetah is an inclusive, socially conscious PR collective that puts their money where their mouth is. They have a current roster of bands that reads like a greatest hits anthology. Brainiac, Catholic School, Jawbox, The New Amsterdams, Oceans in the Sky. The list goes on and on. They also do PR for record labels such as A La Carte, Arctic Rodeo, Steadfast, Rad Girlfriend, and so many more. How do they pay it forward? How do they put their money where their mouth is? By generating thousands of dollars in annual charitable donations to the likes of Women in Vinyl, Coalition of Communities of Color, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and many, many more. The man has the receipts. I've seen them. It is real. The artists, labels, and podcasts Sweet Cheetah works with are curated with an eye on working primarily with friends. You could find Sweet Cheetah on all of the social media platforms, be it Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look for Sweet Cheetah PR and they will be there. He's been Tim, I've been Peter, and Sweet Cheetah has been beautiful. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I'm your host, Peter, and I am still here. And tonight, it is my honor and privilege to give to you a band that I have been enamored of since the early 90s. A band that changed the face of punk and indie rock in a manner that few have been able to recreate. That band being the one and only, the celebrated, the lauded, the worshipped Brainiac. This past January, Brainiac released the Predator Nominate, an archival EP that was issued for Record Store Day on vinyl, and was a welcome addition to my personal collection and to pop culture at large. We haven't had a Brainiac record in so long. We got the Attic tapes in 2021, also from Dayton, Ohio. But before that, it would have been Hissing Pigs and Static Couture, which was 1996. Before that, 94's Bonsai Superstar, and 93's highly influential Smack Bunny Baby. Of course, there are a slew of EPs dating back far before that. But this band had such a crucial impact on the landscape of independent music. They were media darlings. They were that band that your cooler older cousin was into, They were whispered about. They were tape traded. They were the subject of more adulation than practically any band that had come before or have come since. And tonight, I give you that conversation. Before we get to that, though, I do want to thank everyone for your support, for listening, for sharing, for rating, reviewing, subscribing. Please keep that going. If you love what we're doing, and hey, what's not to love, right? If you love what we're doing, keep that up. Keep giving that energy, and I will keep giving you this sort of content. I'm confident that if you give me the time to listen to what I produce, you're going to get something that you probably wouldn't have gotten anywhere else, because podcasts can be very stuffy, very boring, and I get that. And sometimes my episodes run a little long. I get that too. That's not the case this evening. This is short and sweet. You can get through the entire thing in under 1 hour's time. I know for the diehards, that's probably a little disappointing. But it cuts through a lot of, the meandering that I can fall into and gets right to the information. We still have the talk. And if you're a frequent listener, you know the talk, you know the question, you know where I'm going with things. That all occurs. But it's just the structure of the interview, the conversation, that makes it very concise, compact, and hard-hitting to a degree. Also, a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughs. There was a lot of levity going on between us. Good rapport. Great people. I love my emails with John Schmerzel. I I look forward to them. He's a very witty character, and he pulls no punches. He is exactly who he, claims to be. He's just a really happy, really fun human being that I feel privileged to have an avenue with which to speak to him. He's that cool. So please, rate, review, subscribe, and most of all, just give us a little chance. Give me a little listen. Help me help you. Help me love you. I swear it'll be groovy. A little word for our sponsor that doesn't get enough due on air, wordforwordinterpretation.com. They are a translation and interpretation firm. They are available wherever you are to translate and interpret any language you speak. You can find them at wordforwordinterpretation.com. Now that we've gotten through that, it is my pleasure, my honor, my privilege to give to you John Schmerzel, Juan Monasterio, Tyler Trent, Tim Krug, Brainiac, on the book, A Very, Very Bad Things podcast.
You're entering into the zone.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah,
I'm well. How are you?
Gosh, sorry. You did you live here before?
No, I just have a lot of friends there. I've been to
Gotcha.
a million of your shows back in the
Yeah.
day. So
I don't know why. I guess anyway. I was gonna mention a guy from here. He was talking our ear off, and we had to make our way across town to get back to the studio. So
all good. So
do you want to we're all kind of around here. This is just audio, but it's nice to see your face, right?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I just do the video just so we could kind of get more of a rapport. It's nicer.
I don't know when I'm joking or not, but I've got a great poker face, so we'll see.
So I'm just for the sake of legality, can I get your names and permission? Your permission just to record your voice for the purposes of this podcast.
Sure.
Monasterio, you have my permission. I'm Tim Krug, and you can permit yourself to use this recording.
Tyler Trent, you have my permission.
I'm John Schmerzel, and I approve of this message.
Wonderful.
That doesn't count.
So you guys have been you've been touring or playing shows. I guess touring is probably
not
the word
quite
for it.
yet. We've gathered and we've practiced 2 days now, and the tour will begin on. We're leaving on
Thursday?
We're leaving on
Tuesday,
and we start playing on Thursday, I guess. Yeah.
So bearing that in mind, you guys haven't, for the most part, toured in.
That is correct.
How long? Like even like in your respective projects that are outside of Brainiac. I'm sure they've played shows, but like a large scale tour. taking on something like that in the age group that we're all in has to be daunting. How are you preparing yourselves for that?
A lot of calisthenics, stretching. John tours still a lot, so it's the rest of us who are in trouble.
Okay. Well, I know, John, you've always kind of like right after Brainiac ended, you kind of still played. You dove headlong into other projects. Everybody else kind of went in different directions. So I guess your muscle is still toned and ready to go. So
I
I guess,
mean, yeah, it kind of just happened, but yeah, like part of the reason why this is happening in the first place is because I was doing I play in the band Caribou live band, and we were playing some festivals past summer, and I ran into the Mogwai guys. We were sharing a festival stage, and I told them we were gonna have because Stuart was in the documentary and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was just explaining to them that we, keep it to yourselves, but we have this like archival EP coming out, and we were like talking about playing a few shows around that basically. And then a couple weeks later, they sent me a message saying like, would you be interested in opening the UK tour that we're going to do in February? And I was like, doing, 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 doing. So I reached out to these guys about it, and I just kind of thought like, there's no way we can all coordinate our schedules and do this. And everyone made concessions and figured it out. So,
well, when you consider, everyone having jobs and,
Yeah.
lives, it's it's tough when you're in your 20s to do something like that if you have, any sort of career outside of music. How does that, like, how did you all clear your schedules, make this happen? Was it just kismet? Did it just so happen everyone had the time off, or how did that go down?
Yeah, I think so. It helps us also early in the year, so we can just exhaust all of our vacation days by mid-February. That's me at least.
that's mainly how I would say it probably happened.
Yeah.
I was
Now-
just lucky enough that my break was starting in December, and I didn't have anything really lined up until like spring, basically. So it was perfect timing. Other than that it's in February and that it's in the UK, it was perfect timing.
Now, it is a different climate right now. I mean, for most of the bands that the people who are going to be coming to see you, they're into the bands that are inspired by you guys.
Mm.
So it's not like a play on age or anything like that, but it's undisputed that Brainiac there are massive repercussions from what you guys had done. So many bands have not directly ripped you off, but damn near close. Your influence is felt broadly. Do you feel that you're going to be coming back into a wave of acceptance, or do you think you're going to have to win over crowds? I don't think you're going to have to, but
We sure hope so. That's the hope, but you never know. I mean,
I feel like that's really hard. I like to keep an open mind about it, but I also I mean, the one thing about it is that the Mogwai are like essentially peers. I mean, they've been also a band for 25, 30 years now. So their fans they probably have some young fans, but they also have fans that are like our age groups, which there may be crossover fans and or just people who knew who we were and will be hopefully excited to see us play. But it's always a little bit of a crapshoot when you're the opener for another band, So it's just good to keep an open mind that people may just be like,
biding their time.
I would think, though, in light of the fact that this, archival EP, it's almost an album. It's 9 songs, but it's an archival EP.
It's longer than Electroshock for President, actually.
Well, but yeah, by far. It's 3 songs more, if I'm not mistaken, correct? In light of this happening, there's got to be, a reintroduced vigor into your collective musical egos and ids. Does this spark something in you guys, maybe to not do Brainiac again, but something akin to it together?
I mean, we all live so far away. Tim and Tyler live in Dayton, but it's Juan and I Juan recently moved back to Southern California, so he and I are like a couple hours drive from each other, but you know, it sounds fun, and we all love each other, and it's we've been talking, and you know, as much as we have been like playing the songs in between, but yeah, it's hard to say. It's just great that this opportunity presented itself, and so we get to, you know, hang out and do all that stuff. But I guess it's kind of one step at a time. We were lucky. It's just lucky enough to be able to do this for, you know, 16 or 17 days plus the, you know, practice time. But I mean, I'm in a couple other projects that are challenged by, you know, location, you know, where we don't live. So even for those things, it's like a lot to get together just to play any shows. And so I feel like it's kind of about the opportunity, but I mean, every time I play go back and play these Brainiac tunings, it's like really inspiring. And so part of me is a little bit like, wow, I should really like write a new batch of songs in this tuning, and that's kind of inspiring. But I don't know if any of us have ever given any thought to like, you know, doing more stuff necessarily just because we're geographically challenged. Maybe.
Right.
Yeah. I think Juan and I would back a solo project for John.
Yeah, there you go.
There, admittedly, though, you kind of have to see that there's something intrinsically different about Brainiac than even everything that was happening in your purview when you were originally a band. There's a reason why people are so spiritually connected to that music, because there was legitimately nothing like it before or since. To walk back into those shoes, are you kind of like trying to channel your youthful selves in order to kind of get into that headspace to recreate this music? Or is it just like second nature at this point, since you did indeed help with the impetus of it?
What do you guys think? I don't know.
I feel like I kind of have to get back into a character that is that person from back then. Like, you know, I think, yeah, it's definitely a little bit of channeling.
That's part of it for me, I guess. And also just like the whole time we've been doing any of this stuff, it's with the mind that like, yeah, we're not trying to like reinvent this band. We're trying to like celebrate the music and the legacy, you know, of what, you know, Tim had started. So, but yeah, so I kind of think about it more with adult eyes, but also I want people to like experience this music as close as possible. You know, like no one else is going to be able to present this music like we can. So
yeah, for me, it's like there's a real sense of gratitude just that I got to be a part of it to begin with. And like when we come back to do these things, it's like, oh man, these songs are actually really freaking great. Like, you kind of forgot, like, wow, this was amazing. Got to be a part of this. Fantastic.
And you're getting to live like a completely different life outside of where you're currently residing, because you're an assistant pastor, are you not?
Yeah, I am. I'm associate pastor right here in Dayton, a suburb of Kettering.
That's incredible. And so you get to basically feed people spiritually on two vastly disparate levels, because there's the spiritual, like the codified Christian spirituality, which I'm Christian as well. So you're feeding that, and you're also feeding into like the youthful abandon of the love of music. I mean, that's got to be a very unique perspective for you to bring back into this.
Yeah, I think definitely so. Absolutely.
I couldn't fathom it. To be honest, I couldn't fathom it.
It's interesting for me too, because it's sometimes it's difficult for people to process that I'm a pastor now, because they just, you know, have experiences with me in the past that were not so pastorally, you know, I guess, in their perception. But yeah, it's been an absolute privilege to get to do this, and I love what I'm doing now as well. And I'm playing drums at my church, and I'm part of the music there. But so I was telling the guys over dinner earlier, it's a whole different whole different beast drumming wise. I'm having to relearn how to play punk rock drums with the calluses to prove it.
Absolutely. The Anderl brothers mentioned to me that you were the pastor at Joe's church, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Joe goes to Life Point Church, my pastor. Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
great guy.
that really like spun me when I heard that. He was on the show like 8 months ago, and he'd mentioned that, and it just blew my mind and made me very happy.
Oh wow,
you'd be
cool.
You'd be surprised how many ex-punk musicians are in different sectors of the clergy or are pastors and whatnot. It's more widespread than one would grant credence to, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So when on the road, it's not going to be that same experience that you guys would have had way back in your salad days, no pun intended, where you're running into people like Marilyn Manson on the road, like coming and crashing your hotel rooms and whatnot. It's going to be probably more peaceful for you, but I would think that would lend to a better performance the next day. You know,
I mean, since I've been still touring and stuff, I kind of knew what to expect as far as like, I mean, things have, first of all, since we toured in the UK, the conditions or, have drastically improved. And like just even roadside services are like, I mean, they used to be really awful. And now I would say America pales in comparison to how like great the rest stops are there. You can get like, whatever, like nice salads and fruit salads and things like that at almost every single rest stop. There's like a Marks and Spencer, these kinds of things. So, yeah, it's going to be a lot more civilized because we're adults and we got hotels for it versus like asking to stay on floors because we were,
After your last song. By the way, need a place to stay.
Yeah. Which punk house has a nice squat we could go and lay on the floor and have roaches crawl over our bodies while we're trying to sleep?
Well, I'm excited for that, John, the rest stops, because back in the day, it was just a Roy Rogers fixin' bar.
Yep, exactly.
The burger toppings.
Yeah, hoping they had the vegan bacos and whatnot.
Right.
So when you get the call, though, is there that twinge of, like almost fear, like, oh my God, can we do this? Was there any sort of apprehension?
I don't think so, just because we've done it over the past couple of years through the, we did it first for, in Dayton before the documentary. And then when the documentary happened, there was the show in New York. And then during one of the shows as the documentary was like kind of premiering around the country in different places and stuff. And we played a show in LA where it was, they played the film in the other room, and then we played a show, and that one Fred Armisen was the guest, but he sang one song. So I think we kind of decided like after that night that it was kind of like we've done this thing with guests, more partially because we out of kind of respect of that thing where Tim was the main singer and have people help us like celebrate this. But that particular night, Fred had only sang one song. We're kind of like, well, we are kind of doing this on our own at this point. Maybe we should, when we knew that the EP was going to come out and we talked about playing a couple of shows, that's sort of like maybe how we would approach it without doing like, guests and kind of making it a more compact thing. And then of course, when we got offered the tour, we had to do it that way because we can't bring a pile of guests with us on tour. So.
Yeah, that's just not tenable.
Mm.
But coming into this too, I'm sure that you guys had at one point approached Tim's mom about all this, correct?
At what point?
Well, when the idea of taking the show on the road again, so to speak.
Oh yeah, like this particular thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she's been abreast, for all the archival stuff that's come out, and ever since the documentary has happened, we've all been more in contact with her and so forth. So yeah, that blessing has been there. And also, I mean, I've mentioned this a few times before, but like at Tim's memorial service, his dad and Ernie Knisley came up to me at one point and were just like, are you going to keep the band going? Basically was the question. It was just like, I absolutely blew me away. I couldn't even like conceive that was like a question that like Terry would ask. But it also made me feel good. Like by the time we got to doing it, even for the first time, that it was like we knew we had Terry was dead at that point, but we knew we had Terry's blessing. And like, I kind of think about it more in like a sort of how they would approach things in the jazz world, because it was more, the music was more important than the membership itself. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me that even the idea of a band in the jazz world wasn't really necessarily, considered to be, something that they held dear per se, because people would come and go. There would be session musicians. There would be, you know what I mean? Like Miles Davis.
Represented.
Yeah. Miles Davis had an all-star cast for Kinda Blue, but when he would go and play it, all of those people had their own careers. He would have other musicians come in and do it. That doesn't really hold true for the punk world, so to speak, or the indie rock world. But the fact that the idea that they thought you could continue this was tenable, absolutely beautiful. One of the main reasons I do this show, and it's the only question that the show is based on, really, is about fear and about existential fear. I ask every artist this because it kind of gives me an idea of what type of person they are. The question being, what is it that terrifies you on an existential level? I know it sounds trite, but it seems to me that that's where the kernel of the person always seems to lie, within the fear, what it is they fear.
I mean, weirdly, I feel like it changes for me, actually. Like, there was a time period in my life where I was like, I'm not afraid to die. Like, I'm comfortable in my skin and who I am and all that kind of stuff. And I just felt like I'd done a lot of things in my life that I was very happy with. And so that at a certain point, I was just like, I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid of that thing. I think that that's kind of changed as I've become an older adult. I'm more afraid not of the death itself of me, but like leaving my loved ones behind and stuff like that. Like, that does, the responsibility of that like weighs more heavily on me than it did. So, but it kind of basically that thing changes. I'm trying to remember what it was when I told myself I wasn't afraid to die then, but it was probably not death, but just getting older, maybe. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing too about aging, right? Like, we all fear getting older, and then we get there and realize it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's on to the next thing. Yeah. So any of the rest of you have an answer to that?
I think fear of getting older, fear of death, they're sort of intertwined.
I thought you were afraid of the robots taking over.
No, I'm into the robots taking over.
He's pro robot.
I'm pro
Yeah,
robot.
he's yeah.
GPT. I'd say recently, I think it's just fear of getting older more than even fear of death. Like, what are you going to be like when you are really old? Like in your late 70s, who's going to take care of you when you can't take care of yourself? That kind of a thing. But I have a pretty healthy fear of death. Also, I think that's just been through my whole life. I'm just a fearful person. I think I would describe myself. I think
He's just afraid of fear.
Traits is that I'm a fearful person.
Yeah. To speak better to him, though, I think the way he uses fear as a catalyst, like he thinks ahead because
like
he realizes, like, whatever, he's thinking ahead in a fearful way, and it motivates you to prepare for things. Like you that's the way I look at your sort of thing. You're always looking ahead and like
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
taking the steps.
One
to
fears
Too much
death.
thinking.
One fears death, and he'll be the first man to live to 150.
But that's the thing, though, right? Like the things that you fear help kind of like mold who you are and inform your morality even more so, in my opinion. Because if it's like the apes, for example, when an atrocity occurs within a group of simians, they watch it very, very closely because that's what they learn from. That's what they know. Okay, I don't want that to happen to me, so I'm not going to do whatever it is that made this bad thing happen to this ape. Same thing with us. Things that terrify us. Yeah, sometimes we stick our hand a little too far into the sauce as far as that's concerned, but it's because we're trying to learn from it and trying to escape that. Same thing with the fear of age, the fear of death. We prepare for that so that what we fear the most doesn't befall us, if that makes sense. That's the way I see it anyway.
Yeah. I think most fears underline or an end result are from a fear of death. You know, many fears lead to that exact thing. For me, I don't fear death, but I'm kind of like what John was saying, more with what you're leaving. And so I have a 20-year-old boy, Noah, and my wife Jennifer, who I love more than anything on planet Earth. So that's kind of I guess a fear for me would just be that I'm a good dad, that I'm setting him up right, leading him down the right path so that he can thrive and be blessed and be successful and have an awesome life, and to be there for that and to continue to be there for that for as long as I can.
And kids, that's another layer too. I have two of them that are 18 years apart. I have a 3-year-old son and I'm sorry, she's 21. I'm getting old.
Oh, you can cut that part out of the interview then.
Don't worry, I intend to. But the fact of the matter is like when you have multiple children, but even one, your fears become irrational, right? Like you'll be laying awake at night and you're thinking like, what if we were to go on vacation and we're on a cruise and the 3-year-old gets too close to the fence on the outer rim of the ship, like, like it's never going to happen. I'm never taking him on a cruise. Stuff like this, like it fuels you, and I think it prepares you for being a more vigilant parent, a more vigilant person, if that makes sense. Or maybe I'm just fucked up, which is entirely plausible. So you're going to be going through Europe. You're going to be seeing a great deal of what culture has to offer there now. What do you think? What are your thoughts on, culture at large now versus then? Because I think the younger people are actually in a better place than we were in the 90s.
I think for me personally, I'm looking forward to actually appreciating and enjoying the culture. Whereas 25 years ago, it just, first of all, I wouldn't buy like a blip, but also I was, young and an idiot and didn't really pay attention to much, and, ate at the local UK McDonald's and, didn't really appreciate or enjoy what there was to offer. So I hear there's really good Indian food.
Oh yeah.
John won't let us eat Indian food here until we get over there. So
I just don't want to overdo it,
So I'm just looking forward to, experiencing the culture as a 50-year-old instead of a 25-year-old. See what that looks like.
Well, I don't think any of us are equipped at that age to really appreciate what culture has to offer. But I think what I'm talking more about is the youth culture. I think kids now are actually they are delivering the promise of what we were all kind of aspiring to back then, with the inclusivity and the nature of the world at large. We were railing against so many things that don't need to be railed against as much anymore, as far as things like gay rights and the like. That was a big deal in the 90s to even take that stance. Now the younger people are all on board with it. It's people our age who are not. So to be part of a rarefied cult group of people who were on board with it, seeing that promise delivered upon is very exciting to me, and to see it abroad, the idea of it's incredible to me. So that's kind of what I was wondering. Like, are you looking forward to seeing what these kids are all about nowadays?
I mean, I would love it if kids came to our shows, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering if kids are going to be coming to our shows.
It might just be us.
So, yeah, it could just be people are in our age group. It's really hard. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm really interested to see is like who's going to be in this audience. And I realize that 95% of the people at the shows with Mogwai are there to see Mogwai, and we're just happen to be the opening band. But I'm still kind of want to see what's what. And we have a number of shows that are our shows, but
yeah, I agree. I'd be cool too if even some people walked away as newfound fans of the band. Tim and I were able to do an interview with the local University of Dayton professor named Art Gibson, and he has this. What is his class even called? Just like the coolest class ever. It's a sociology major class, but it's like this pop culture, music, pop culture, something like that. But he shows them the Brainiac documentary, his whole class.
Wow.
And then he just puts it out there and just lets it be. And then he was telling us how they come to him and are like, I want to check that band out. And like Hissing Prigs is my favorite. And our other kid be like, oh, you know what? That really resonated with me. And I went on Bonsai Superstar is amazing. And then the other person's like, gosh, this is terrible. But they're experiencing it in all different ways. And so hopefully maybe that translates a little bit with the Mogwai people, both young and old, that maybe haven't heard us. Like, hey, this is different.
I can't imagine anyone who likes Mogwai wouldn't have heard of Brainiac, though. You know what I mean? That just it seems like they're part and parcel. But
I think it's easier to approach it that they won't, and then if they do, it'll. You know what I mean? It's more like I'd rather approach it from they don't know who we are, and so therefore you feel more like
try a little harder.
Yeah, try a little harder, basically. Yeah. Otherwise, than just lulling yourself into like a comfort zone of some kind. But
I think the biggest compliment to you guys ever came from the fact that Buzz from the Melvins was in the documentary and speaking highly of you. I don't care who else you could throw in who would have been a Mogwai fan, who were involved in the documentary at one point or another. Buzz is really rough. You know what I mean? He's not the easiest sell.
Yeah, he's not saying a lot of nice things about a lot of bands.
No. And for him to come out and not only give like a glowing review of everything you've done, but for him to actively want to be a part of a documentary about you guys, to me, that is the biggest cosign that could ever possibly befall you.
Yeah, and then they also did Flight Paper.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
I almost forgot about that. Yeah,
I couldn't believe that when I saw that. Like, whoa!
And
I was a little scared to listen to it, and then I was really surprised that it was actually really good.
It's like the Melvins doing Flight Paper.
It makes sense, and we're talking about a guy who, he pisses all over Nirvana and makes fun of Dave Grohl, and he's not a forgiving guy. Somebody like that shows up for you, that's a big win. And there's a lot of cultural implications when it comes to the Melvins too, because like Brainiac, heavily copied. Like an entire genres have been built on what the Melvins and Brainiac have both done. You know what I mean? The Locust wouldn't have happened without Brainiac. Like the Dillinger Escape Plan, like bands that are so wide and across the board. borrowed heavily from your oeuvre. That's why I think when you, maybe not the United States, because we're always about 25 years behind everything, but Europe, I think the kids are showing up for this one. I think you're going to be very surprised at what happens.
It's funny when you asked that question at first, like doing this then versus doing this now, and like comparing and contrast, my mind immediately went to like when we first went over there, there was no European Union, and the UK was like, we went over there, and it hadn't been like, nothing had been redecorated or revamped since the 70s. Everything just looked old. And since that time period, there's been the European Union and all this stuff, and then there's been Brexit. So I was sort of just like, well, it kind of is sort of, it's gone back to the way it was when we toured before. But I do feel like like a lot of that was inspired by people not knowing what they were voting for when they voted for Brexit. And I feel like a lot of the young people, at least the young people are like, they know that it was a mistake, I think. So
Brexit, I think the wool got pulled over everyone's eyes with that one, because it was packaged and sold as something vastly dissimilar.
Right.
So when that got voted into being, number one, I didn't think it was really going to happen. I thought this was like, what was the name of the fascist right wing then? The something front.
National Front.
The National Front. I thought it was something like that. You know what I mean? Where, the Smiths would write a song about it, making fun of it. It was they birthed the Nazis in England, the Nazi skinheads, and it would basically be bemoaned and tossed aside. But people actually voted for this one. That's the part that, like, it made me feel like the whole world was going insane, because Brexit happened. We got Trump. What's going on? Nothing makes sense anymore. But that's not the youth. That's not the kids doing that. That's people like our age who are losing their minds. Doesn't make sense to me. But obviously they weren't punks. Unless they're Morrissey, because he's like well into that craziness. What a disappointment, right? I guess, hero worship can only go so far, though.
Exactly.
Say never meet your heroes.
Yeah, that's what they say, but I can tell you with a great degree of certainty, I've met a majority of mine, and I haven't really been disappointed.
Good. That's a good thing.
Nice.
Yeah, I lucked out. And, meeting HR was a little, from the Bad Brains, was a little strange, because he was not well medicated at the time, but he was still nice. He was just out there.
Mm-hmm.
Out there's okay. I can handle out there.
Sure.
So, bearing all of this craziness in mind, what's your number one hope for this? Like, what do you hope will become of this journey?
That we make it all the way through.
Yeah. and then you're right about the young people liking us.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting every time we've done this, it's been like a big to do for like a couple of shows that we hope we were able to like distill a bit of what we used to do. And it's exciting because we actually have an opportunity to like really become as fine oiled a machine as we could hope to be. So I think that's exciting, especially in the order that we're doing it, like being in the UK and then coming back and playing some, being a seasoned machine, for the home crowd,
You get to practice on foreign soil.
That's right.
Trial by fire. That's pretty intense. That takes a lot of courage. But
stupidity. I was going to say, we're just dumb enough to do it.
Isn't that how all great things start, though?
Yeah, just asking, and that's kind of part of it too. Sometimes you just have to ask, and people can stay, and you're also allowed to say no. Is the other part of it.
Just the girl standing in front of the boy.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing. So not to beleaguer the point or drag this on any farther, where is it that you want to see your legacy? Because to me it seems like it's cemented, but do you think what you're doing now is going to like blow it up even further, like really cement its face on the Mount Rushmore of indie rock?
That's not really for us to decide.
Yeah.
I think that's for other people
Right.
to decide where we're gonna
Yeah.
fall in the.
But on the other hand, like all this stuff, like the archival releases, first of all, the documentary, and then doing the record store day archival releases, and then this EP, because of all that happened, like, there's been press against. We were in the New York Times and we were in the Guardian, and weird things have happened because of that. Like people have come out of the woodworks and called us or written to us about other kind of opportunities, and we're not, necessarily like able to commit to those things, but it has reinvigorated, in a sense, that stuff. And so therefore young people who didn't know who we were see that there's a new record, quote unquote new record in the stores, and probably is reinvigorating, a new sense of Brainiac. But yeah, as Juan said, like, we're not the ones to write this history for ourselves. We're just here to celebrate the music and have a good time.
I think that speaks to, an honesty within all of you, because if you were chasing some sort of legacy or whatnot, that would lend itself, in my opinion, to be kind of, disingenuous. Like I'm like doing it for the money. There's no real money in this stuff anymore. We all know that. This is about love at this point.
Actually, we're getting paid in Bitcoin for some of these.
No, it's Britcoin.
Oh, Britcoin. Yeah. It's a new one.
Oh my God. But there's no real payday in music. Not now anyway. You're only doing it for the love at this point, which is the most beautiful thing anyone can do. I celebrate this, and I have to say, in my, be all end alls when I started this show, Brainiac was right at the top of the list. I told Tim this, if I could ever get, a Dayton band that meant everything, Brainiac. If it's, San Diego, it'd be Rocket from the Crypt. Like for every city, there's that band. And for Dayton, you guys were always that band. Do you feel like you're carrying that kind of weight too into all of this, like being that penultimate Dayton band?
I don't want to think about that at all.
We weren't. There's some new existential fears.
Yeah. New fear. To me, I don't know about the other guys, but to me, it's the opposite. It's not so much of a weight as I think this is another opportunity for our Dayton tribe to celebrate with us. And we get to play here in a couple of weeks to a sold out show, and it's going to be a blast. And people are really excited about it. And, they want to hear Brainiac songs, and we want to play them for them. And it's going to be a really great night. And I think there's not a whole lot of weight there to me. It's more just celebration and love for the city and the people in it. And if you've ever seen a Brainiac show in person or on tape, I mean, Tim mentioned Dayton, Ohio about 73 times in a 25-minute set. So we're all about the Dayton.
Oh yeah. I mean, listen, having seen you guys with the Jesus Lizard, I can tell you, like, talk about two titans at the heights of their powers, and seeing two of the craziest people I've ever seen on stage in two separate bands together in one night. I mean, one's naked and it's not Tim. Then, it's two opposite ends of the wild man spectrum. But to hold your own with easily one of the most iconoclastic bands of all time, Jesus Lizard, and I think you actually blew them off stage that night.
Wow. Thank you for saying that.
I was in college. I drove all the way from Scranton, Pennsylvania to come to that show.
That's
Where was it? What show?
It was in was it in Cleveland? It was in Ohio. I know that.
Okay.
I was under the influence of stimulants in order to make the drive.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Thank God for recovery for me, but yeah, that's how I got there. And I'm trying to remember which city it was in Ohio. I know it took me about 8 hours to get there.
Columbus,
Wow.
Toledo.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It had to be Cincinnati.
Oh, that would make more sense. Yeah, because I kind of don't really remember playing it with the Jesus Lizard that many cities in Ohio, but Cincinnati.
Probably. Oh no, Cincinnati was Annie's.
Oh,
Place
Ah,
called
that's
Annie's.
right.
Yeah, great show. Kind of like a sunken pit area, and
Yep.
that
Okay.
was a stellar night. Yeah, really great show.
There was nudity, there was psychosis, and it was something I will never forget. So listen, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I really appreciate you coming out and talking to me tonight and getting all together to do so, which is a rare opportunity. I don't get to do that much on here. The only thing I wish is I could have actually been physically in your presence, but you win some, you lose some.
well, are you going to be driving on stimulants to come see us in the next month?
I'm gonna try. There will be no stimulants though.
Okay. And maybe coffee, or I don't know.
Where do you think you're gonna try to get to?
Well, I'm thinking you're playing New York, correct?
No, Detroit, Cincy, and Dayton.
I'll be going to Dayton then because I'll have a multitude of places to crash without having to pay for a hotel room.
Okay.
One of the Anderl brothers, or the Legion of Doom, I could go crash at because I know everybody that lives in that squat to this day. So it's going to be there. So I will, if and when I know definitely my wife is going to clear me to go, I will email you and let you know for sure.
Cool.
Okay.
We'll put you on the
Awesome.
list.
I appreciate it so much, guys.
Yeah. Hey, thanks
all
for
right,
doing
thank
this.
you.
Appreciate it.
You have a good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
It means a lot.
It means a lot to me that you came on, so I thank you.
Oh.
All right.
Have a good night, guys.
Hey, you
Good
too.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
All right, folks. That was my conversation with the gentleman of Brainiac. What an honor. What an absolute privilege. Just so cool that I got to talk to these guys, and I'm going to be harassing them in the future. Whatever they come up with, whatever they intend to release archivally or otherwise, in Brainiac or outside of Brainiac, I do intend to keep going with them. And if you don't know Brainiac, get out there and listen. You're missing out. If you do know Brainiac, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was everything you hoped it would be. They really are an incredible group. They really are vastly important. I'm going to cut it off here. From everyone at 3:33 a.m. Productions, they've been Brainiac. I've been Peter. You've been beautiful. And this has been the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. Good night, everybody.